Hello everybody, my name's James, and for the benefit of those listening to the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on, well, I was going to say anything football related, but the season's nearly done, isn't it? So just about anything in life that they'd like. I'll be here for the next hour or so, subject to how many people are in the chat. Might be a little bit less, but before I start, let me timestamp this. Just gone 12 p.m. UK time on Wednesday, June the 7th. Delighted to say this won't be the only content on the Planet FPL YouTube channel today. We have got coverage of game week 39 tonight. We'll be screening the women's match at 5:30 p.m. UK time and the men's match at 6 p.m. UK time, and that should finish just in time for you to watch the Conference League final, which kicks off at 8 p.m. tonight in UK. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into the questions. Ray Qureshi starts with a tough one. Says, "Hi James, your Premier League team of the season with no more than one player from each team." God. Okay, let's break this down quite simply then. So, Haaland's got to go in. An Arsenal player, candidate, Saka, Odegaard, Saliba. Come back to that. Manchester United, I think Rashford left wing. Newcastle's Trippier right back. Liverpool, let's put Salah in. I attempted to say Alisson, but I'm going to pick someone else for a goalkeeper, which I'll say now, David Raya of Brentford, I think the goalkeeper. Brighton. Brighton. Tough. Let's go for balance. Let's go Pervis Estupiñán of Brighton. Villa. I'm tempted to go Douglas Luiz, actually. And Tyrone Ming for balance as well, maybe. Yeah, Tyrone Ming's left-sided centre-back. Let's go with that. Tottenham. Can I get away with playing Harry Kane at 10? I probably can. So that's front four, isn't it? Salah, Kane, Rashford, Haaland. So we're going to have to go Arsenal defensive. So let's go Saliba. So what have we got there? Trippier, Saliba, Mings, Estupiñán, goalkeeper Raya. I just need two midfielders, don't I? Paulinho of Fulham and Declan Rice. There you go. Have that. And I see Ray's put underneath. Raya, Trippier, Saliba, Mings, Estupiñán, Rice. He's actually got the exact 11 I've gone for. Okay. There you go, Ren. I promise you I hadn't seen that, Ray. And Ray's put further in the chat, he's put the exact 11 that I've just gone for. And I promise you I hadn't seen that. Neil Thompson says, "Hello, just caught up with all of the content from half-term week. As life goes crazy, thank you for all of it. Hope you and Suj both have some well-earned downtime." Yeah, looking forward to it. We're not quite finished yet. I've got a Premier League quiz of the year tomorrow with Clayton Fernandez joining me for that, who I can now confirm and will introduce properly to you tomorrow. He's now part of the Planet FPL team. He's joined us as business development manager, which is quite exciting. And Friday, me and Suj are going to do this statistical look at our FPL seasons as well. We've got plenty more on Patreon, which includes our end of season party on Saturday night as well. Christian Prefer says, "I think Suj forgot to use his two transfers in game week 38, which is why he finished outside the top 100k, and also all 5 cup finals as a result. Disaster." Yeah, we covered this on Monday's pod. He wasn't going to get to 38 weeks without cocking something up, was he? Neil says, "Am I leaving Clayton or Nico in charge?" I'm leaving Suj in charge, I think. No, leave. I don't know. Nico probably doing some other things maybe for the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure as yet. We'll discuss it in the next couple of days. But we're just having a break. We're just going to switch off. We'll be back Monday, July the 3rd, which we think is probably going to be the week that FPL relaunches. Tiffy Ferrero says, "Congratulations, James, on winning the Planet FPL Correspondence Cup and Rakaba Group Cup. You beat the West Ham guys in both the finals." Yes, I beat Suj in the work one. I beat Chris Stone in the correspondence one. Typical Tottenham fan, right? Always concentrating on the cups, although don't normally win any of them. Roseanne Fleur says, "Why did you take 12 hits, minus 48 points this season?" Probably because I felt at the time each hit was justified. I'm not... I guess that feels like a lot, doesn't it? Which I wasn't quite aware of. 48 point hit feels like a lot. That's... 14 hits, isn't it? So it's an average of one every 3 weeks or so. So that feels like a lot. I'll be honest. I think a lot of that's probably due to increased double game weeks. But I feel like I want to say I was in the 60s or maybe even 70s last season when it was particularly wild. So there's a little bit of impact to that. I'm not someone who enjoys taking hits, so I would have taken them because I felt that they were justified. So I'd have to look properly to see how well they did or didn't do. Bloomer Caldera says, predict 23-24 FPL prices of any two players from each Premier League club. I mean, that's a lot. It's probably too much. And I'm going to skip it because I just think that's going to take 10 minutes of time. If you want to jump in, Bloomer, and ask for one or two specific players, then yeah, I'm happy to cover that, but otherwise it's going to take too long. Damien Rozalski says, as a Sheffield United fan, can we buy Richarlison for 10 million plus exchange Ryan Brewster as we need a proper striker? You can't have Richarlison for 10 million. You can do for 50 million. And if it helps you want me to take Ryan Brewster off your hands for that, then fine, we'll do that. Sheffield United do need a forward. It was very much discussed with Ben Tomo Thompson, our Sheffield United correspondent, when he came on a few weeks ago. We agreed that the forwards is probably going to be a little bit light, and there might be a repetitive theme of Sheffield United struggling to score goals in the Premier League if they don't sort that out. So I did a little piece for our patrons yesterday on positions that I thought each club needed to improve on, and for Sheffield United, didn't even debate on it. It was absolutely a forward. Alfredo Demetrius says, your take on Julian Brandt and Leon Goretzka transfer links to Premier League. Also, why are Tottenham not signing Gundogan as a free agent? They're both good players. I know more about Goretzka, and I know there's a lot of people actually been quite disappointed with his performances at Bayern, but actually whenever I've seen him, I've quite liked him as a player. I'll be honest, I haven't seen those two players linked with any Premier League clubs. It's not to say they haven't been. I'm sure they have been, but I'm not sure who they've been linked to. In terms of Tottenham signing Gundogan as a free agent, I think I'd probably have to smash Gundogan's head against the wall and say, why would you want to join Tottenham at the moment? So it's not unthinkable, but the wages have to be big. I know he's been very much linked with a move to Arsenal as well, so I'm not an idiot, right? If he's got a choice between Arsenal and Tottenham at the moment, go to Arsenal, wouldn't he, as a direct replacement for Xhaka, and that would work. So why is Ilkay Gundogan going to walk away from a team that's possibly going to win the Champions League on Saturday to play no European football at all when he's been an important member of that? So he's completely out of reach for Tottenham at the moment. He could go and join anybody. I think he's been linked with Barcelona as well. So why are Tottenham not signing him? Tottenham can't sign Ilkay Gundogan. Javi Alcantara says, when picking players for your FPL differential team, do you pick players who are less than 5% owned or 10% owned? We go with less than 10, which can mean towards the end of a season that it's quite easy to put a team together, but it's not easy at the start. So less than 10% is the rule that we work on that. Callum Odumbelli says, are Wolves going to sell Jimenez this window? Also, I can't understand how Wolves are in FFP problems. So I think we'd probably assume at this stage that Julian Lopetegui is going to stay. So therefore, it's highly likely that Wolves will sell Jimenez. I don't think those two are clashing, I think. And that's probably gone back to right to the start where Jimenez was at the World Cup at Mexico and he didn't look like he was making himself available for Wolves. I realise there's two sides to every story here. So I don't think Lopetegui has been particularly high on him. He's not returned, obviously, as the player that was outstanding prior to injury and was getting looked at by everybody. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a parting of the ways there. On the FFP problems, so no, I don't know why there's potential problems as well, but there's a lot of people suggesting that they might be. What I'd say is a sale with someone like Ruben Neves probably clears the problems, but they are probably a club who's not going to spend big this summer. And I think that's part where the Lopetegui rumours of him departing have come in, where he's not been informed that this might be a scenario of problem this summer, and therefore doesn't feel like he's in charge of the job that was sold to him. So it sounds like he's probably going to stay on, but it also sounds like Wolves won't be spending big this summer, and I think they might be in for a difficult 12 months, to be honest. Callum also says, is Postecoglou going to transfer in Australian players in the Tottenham team like Harry Souttar? Well, Harry Souttar was struggling to get in the Leicester team towards the end of the season, so I'd find that quite unlikely. I'm sure if he's aware of young, up-and-coming Australian players, then I'm sure he'd be interested. He's obviously got We can club Australia into that because they qualify through Asian qualifying, but he's got a very good understanding, we know, of the Asian market. We've seen that with many of his signings for Celtic. So it wouldn't come as a surprise, but I don't think he's not going to buy Australian players for the sake of it. He's not going to buy Asian players for the sake of it, because now it's probably a more difficult judgment in terms of if you're going into that market, are those players good enough to play at Premier League level? And quite a number of those players at Celtic who Tottenham might be interested in probably are, but it's a bigger jump directly from the J League, for example, straight into the Premier League. So he's not going to discriminate on certain types of signings, I don't think, no. Laxman says Chelsea want money, so they've listed more than 10 players on the transfer market. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's not a shock. We know that Chelsea need to recoup some money, but then there's obviously speculation that we're going in for Manuel Ugarte, which included potentially buying a stake in Sporting Lisbon. Looks like Ugarte's going to Paris Saint-Germain. That might even be confirmed now. I think that's all but official. So they're still going in for big players. Been linked with other big players, but I think to make that happen now, there certainly needs to be a cost cutting. In any case, Chelsea have far too many footballers, even if it wasn't an FFP concern. Got too many players there, and need to get rid of a lot of that with obviously no European football. Lewis Stapleton says, is Jamaica going to win CONCACAF Gold Cup in July as they have Mikel Antonio as striker? Are West Ham going to win the Conference League final tonight because they have Mikel Antonio as a striker? Might do. You would imagine that USA and Mexico would remain favourites for that. And there's obviously an improving Canada who want to be a part of that as well at the top end. So, no, Jamaica wouldn't be one of the favourites. I'll be honest, I didn't even know the Gold Cup was on this summer. Sagnik says, ahoy, young man. Guess you are going to get a lot of Postecoglou questions today. So I'm going to avoid all that and ask you, how's life going for you? Yeah, life's going all right. I can't complain. I'm looking forward to a little bit of a break. I'm pleased about the Postecoglou news. He wouldn't have been my first choice. You all know that. It would have been Roberto De Zerbi. But the more I've seen over the last couple of weeks, the more impressed I am. And it's beginning to look like that maybe he was one of Tottenham's first choices to begin with, considering how quickly it's been dealt with following Scottish Cup final triumph at the weekend. That suggests maybe this has been on the cards for a couple of weeks, actually. Tottenham's statement yesterday suggested as such that this was the earliest they could have made the appointment. So, yeah, I'm fine. Look, I've got something to look forward to in my football team as well, so I'm quite interested to see what will happen next season. In terms of life itself, yeah, no grumbles. I'm good. Bakaya says, why is Sean Dyche wanting Weghorst at Everton? Weghorst got him sacked at Burnley by not scoring enough goals. Without Weghorst didn't solely get Sean Dyche sacked at Burnley. There was a potential disagreements with the new ownership, ALK, which I think was quite important at that stage. They wanted to go in a very different direction for the football club, I think, as seen by the appointment of Vincent Kompany. So it certainly wasn't on Weghorst. Him not scoring goals didn't help, but that's not the reason that he got sacked. Why does Sean Dyche want him? Well, Manchester United wanted him in January, so is it that bad? Everton certainly need a centre forward, and it's probably a fine balancing act for them in the sense they probably won't regularly go two up front. Can't rely on Dominic Calvert-Lewin to stay fit, but a fit Dominic Calvert-Lewin would probably still be Everton's best forward, irrespective of who they bought. When he was having the period, I think of the game at Brighton, for example, the game at Leicester, Calvert-Lewin looked fit and he looked good. So there's probably a difficult balancing act there between getting in a forward who's going to be good enough to stand in for him and maybe not be the actual number 9, because a fit Dominic Calvert-Lewin is still a very good forward for Everton. So yeah, I can understand the interest there. I'd probably be very cut price because I'm sure Burnley don't want to keep hold of him. And he obviously knows the qualities of the player. Rima Rodri says, will you consider Taiwo Awoniyi and Brian Mbeumo, if listed as a midfielder, as FPL options next season? I wouldn't rule anybody out, right? It's very much dependent on pricing. Awoniyi, we discussed on the last game with Review Pod and said, look, he can't jump up massively in price. So maybe yes, considering his form at the end of last season. Equally, we said similar about Mbeumo. Are you just going to price him up significantly higher purely because Ivan Toney's suspended until January? I'm not sure that's what they'll do. So It's very much dependent on the price, and obviously not just the prices of them, but the prices of others, right? If Awoniyi is 5.5 and there's no other decent looking forward at sub 6 million, then it'd be of interest to everybody, wouldn't he? So, yeah, I certainly wouldn't rule out players like that at this stage. Damian Rozalski says, should Newcastle United sign Christian Pulisic to play left wing or right wing? That one seems a little bit out there. I think Pulisic, certainly at the end of the COVID season, looked like he was going to go on and be an absolute star for Chelsea. And I think at that point, the heir to Eden Hazard's throne, if you will, not kicked on, primarily because of injuries, but I think also technical issues as well. I think of how hard Newcastle work off the ball. I don't really see that as a fit, to be totally honest. That's not to call the player lazy, but I think there's a lot of intense off the ball work that's very important for Newcastle. So I don't particularly see that link. I've not heard that link, so it'd probably be a no from me. Roseanne says, do you expect all-out attack chip being introduced next season in FPL? I'm not sure why it would be. It wasn't a good chip, right? It was a chip that allowed you to play all 8 of your attackers in one go, but if you lost one, it was rendered irrelevant and there was no point having it. So I literally have no idea why they would bring that back. Lombardetto says, with the Premier League fixtures being out on June the 15th, yes, June the 15th, 8 days away, will it give us an idea of which team players to target in FPL? Of course it will. There'll be something that comes from the fixtures, but that might also impact some of the pricing. So I think an example last year would be Crystal Palace had an unbelievably difficult opening sort of 10 fixtures or so, and it just made their players very difficult, some of them very fairly priced to look at. And those players might be the same price this year, and they'll have a good opening 10 fixtures, say like their end to this season, and they'll be of real interest. So I think once the fixtures are out, you can start considering things where there'll be certain players in certain teams where you know there'll be 4.5 defenders, for example, and you can start looking at rotation things should you want to. I wouldn't overly think about it too much until the actual game launches and you see these prices, for example. But yeah, there's definitely things from the fixtures next week which will be important. We can ascertain good runs, bad runs. That's not going to change massively between now and when the season kicks off, subject to, I don't know, Club X gets a takeover and suddenly spends 300 million. Maybe they're a more difficult fiction they might appear right now. But it's not going to change now. The Lutons and Sheffield Uniteds and Bournemouths and Forests and the like, no matter what they do in the next couple of months, are still going to start the season as green fixtures, even if they prove to be better and perform at sort of, say, Brentford or Fulham's level this year. Andre Traore says, your thoughts on Saudi government pumping in billions of cash in their football league without any caps to make it strong and steal top players? So it's an interesting one. I covered this in brief detail for our patrons this morning. Obviously, PIF have bought the 4 leading clubs, if you will, in Saudi Arabia. And obviously the money that's being pumped in is obscene, it's fair to say. I was also just reading that these players might not even have to pay tax as well. Like it's astronomical sums. It is eye-watering. And even if you just remove all the political aspects behind it, you can see why some players jump at that opportunity, particularly towards the end of their careers. But I was deliberating what the end goal is. Like they've bought the same 4 teams in Saudi Arabia. Who's the priority to like win the domestic league and stuff? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Okay, the build up of the league. Some speculation. The target is for the Saudi Arabian league to become considered a top 5 league in world football. That's going to take some work when there's no traditional knowledge worldwide of these teams and their historical. I couldn't tell you which one had won the Saudi Arabian league the most historically, for example, but probably could for the majority of leagues around the world that had a decent, sustainable league. I wondered if the goal was perhaps for these teams to be in a position that one day they might be able to join a Champions League or a World League version of the Champions League. Like, what's the goal here? And I think that's something that's going to be speculated a lot more in the coming months. How do I feel about it? I feel quite uneasy about it, to be honest. I'm not for it. I think there's plenty of reasons why a lot of us feel it's all distasteful and stuff, where a lot of that money comes from, the ideologies behind some of the regimes, not to say all of them. But yeah, it leaves me feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Am I that bothered that an individual player goes there to earn X amount of money? No, not particularly. I just think they'll have to do a massive amount of work to get it to whatever they're trying to achieve. But I've seen people comparing it to when the Chinese Super League started going mad. The difference with that is the government intervened and started putting restrictions in place, such as salary caps, the amount of foreign players you could have, etc. Whereas that's not going to happen in Saudi Arabia. It's a bottomless pit of cash, right? Perlo's Pen said, what would be your current World 11? God, blimey. I mean, look, I'm not best placed to answer that question, which I'd have to openly admit, because I don't watch enough world football elsewhere. But I'm tempted to say Pickford, Alexander-Arnold, Walker, Stones, Shaw, Rice, Bellingham, Foden, Saka, Kane, and Rashford or Grealish. Toss a coin. Sounds about right to me. Sean T says, is player prices the hardest FPL decision each season? I think players like Chilwell and James need to be reduced due to poor season, but have the explosiveness to make mockery of lower price point. Yeah, there's a balancing act, and I think some historical wedge in that has to be included. So if you take Raheem Sterling's price, who was never really of interest to us this year, his price stayed quite high. I was going to say the transfer, but more importantly, his historical performance and the possibility to be explosive. You could even make the case that was similar for Bruno Fernandes. Heung-min Son's not going to be 8 million next year, right? He's still going to be a pretty big price, despite Tottenham obviously dropping off and he himself dropping off. So I think that needs to be factored in. Like, you can't be putting Chilwell and James in at 5 million. We dropped to 5.5 or so. What did they start last year at 6? Were they even 5.5 anyway? I can't recall, to be totally honest. So I don't think they can drop too far. But at the end of the day, they've still got to be fit and play games to even be of interest. And Chelsea have got to improve for them to be of interest as well. So, yeah, probably a little dip, but with a knowledge of historical to make sure that's not made a mockery of. Like, are we going to drop Andy Robertson's price massively? We're not, are we? Because Liverpool finished 5th last year? I don't think so. Francis Logan says, absolutely gutted about Ange leaving Celtic, but FPL, it's going to be fun. Yeah, it certainly looks like it. And I think, look, the main priority for me, as I've said several times, is I want to watch a good football team again. It certainly looks like it's going to be fun. I don't know how good we're going to be defensively, and we've been bad, but it will certainly be better to watch. So, yeah, it does look like it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to seeing how it pans out. I'm fully behind him as a choice. I think the football club's actually done something sensible for a change. So quite happy. And yes, I think from an FPL perspective, he's going to be fun. The one that really the two really to keep an eye on in pre-season is Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie, who's going to join, I presume is not going to go back out on loan, going to join Famoud Nazi, and they should both be placed as defenders. And they might not play as them next year. And we're only going to know that once we see Tottenham in pre-season, but that's going to be after the pricing comes out and stuff. So I think they're two names really to keep an eye on during the summer. But you're going to need defensive returns, I think. I wouldn't be surprised that the research I began to do has suggested to me that Tottenham will probably start quite slowly, in the sense that, when I say slowly, I don't mean in terms of physically not playing a slow tempo. I mean physically in terms of results. It wasn't a perfect start at Celtic, and there is a suggestion that it will take quite a while for people to understand his methods and get on board and be able to play the style that he wants to play. So it might be there's a lot of infrequency in what Tottenham do early in the season. It might be to have a really good result against a good team and a really bad result against a bad team. It might be a bit up and downy. Up and downy, is that even a saying? So that's something certainly to bear in mind. Tiffy Ferreira says, are you going to watch Europa Conference League final tonight with Suj in your studio? No, I'm not. I'm going to watch the game at home. I will certainly watch it after game week 39. And Suj, I think he's going into town to watch it somewhere. I don't know where. He hasn't told me. I'm not going to stalk him or anything. But I think he's going out. And we'll get his reaction on Patreon tomorrow on Tottenham. We'll see. And look, I wish him and I wish our West Ham followers the very best of luck tonight. It's a massive game for the football club. Good luck with it. No, we won't be watching it together. He should be with his West Ham people. Miles Thompson says, Bradford fan here. Gutted how the season finished. Mark Hughes' negative tactics ultimately costing us in the playoffs. However, I was able to enjoy Leeds going down on the final day, so cheers to your boys. I should point out that Leeds would have gone down anyway, even if they'd have beat my boys on the final day. Christian Prefer says, suggest one central attacking midfielder for Burley to sign this season. I presume that's meant to be Burnley. It's probably someone we haven't heard of. I mean, should they not? Josh Brownhill's another one who might be quite interesting in terms of price, who did quite well in Gaffer Fantasy. Slightly different role to what he was playing in the Premier League for Burnley and allowed to get into the box. One to keep an eye on if he's cheap. Like if he's 4.5, he's going to be in everyone's team. It's probably more about looking back down the leagues. So would they be interested in someone like Gustavo Harmer from Coventry? I was quite impressed with at the playoff final. Can't say I've seen a huge amount of, but people have been very impressed with him this season. And picking parts from other sides have been close too. But I suspect Burnley will buy a lot of players that we've probably never heard of, in all honesty. Francis Logan says, James, can Kane play the Kyogo role and play a high press number 9, or is Kyogo taking his place? He's obviously referring to Kyogo at Celtic. We had a big discussion about this on Patreon yesterday. And those who've listened to me the last few weeks have said I've said consistently that I think Harry Kane will stay. I've now eased on that for two reasons. One, obviously, the position's up for grabs at Real Madrid. And two, it might be that Harry Kane just doesn't fit into Postecoglou's system. And Tottenham might be better off breaking away. Now, it's no good in selling Harry Kane, but for the team longer term, it might be that it's the right solution. And I've said this several times for a very long time, that Tottenham can't play a high-energy pressing game off the ball that's coherent with much of what we see in modern football with Harry Kane in the team. But you sacrifice that because of how good Harry Kane is. So it's a balance act, right? As ever, we talk about spinning narratives, and you can spin that narrative either way. But I can't sit here and say I want Tottenham to sell Kane. That's ridiculous. Of course I don't want Tottenham to sell Harry Kane. But I certainly understand it even more this week than I would have understood it last week. I still think Tottenham won't sell to Manchester United. I think he'll either go to Real Madrid or he'll stay. Would be my take at the moment. Unless Manchester United want to offer a serious amount of money that's going to be beyond what Tottenham want to get for the player. Or unless Postecoglou, as kind of first remit in charge, goes upstairs and says, I want you to sell him to Manchester United, then the football club should do that. Heather says, hey James, no question, just a thanks for the content over the season. Thank you very much, Heather. Hope all is well. James says, morning, no idea of your music preferences. So if you were going to Glastonbury, which headliner would you prioritise? Arctic Monkeys, Guns N' Roses, or Elton John? For me, it'd probably be Guns N' Roses, I should imagine. But I know that, I mean, I'm not much for a festival goer and stuff, but I know that the lineup's pretty strong this year at Glastonbury. Francis Logan says, Celtic tried to sign Mitoma of Brighton, but just missed out. I expect he'll be Ange's second signing after Kyogo. Why would Karo Mitoma swap Brighton for Tottenham right now? Like, sure, great. It's also not high priority position for Tottenham, right? The spine of the team, goalkeeper, central defence, central midfield, and possibly a replacement for Kane should he go. He's far more important. Christian Prefer says, Victor Osimhen to Man United or Tottenham if Harry Kane leaves. I wouldn't think Tottenham can't compete for a player like Victor Osimhen at the moment. Absolutely no chance. More likely to go to Manchester United than Kane at the moment would be my take on that. I don't know if obviously Spalletti leaving Napoli has influenced anything where he may be looking to leave now. I have no idea. He's obviously been outstanding for Napoli this season. Victor Osimhen is not going to join a team that's not playing European football. So just don't see that. If he was to come to the Premier League, it's Manchester United, Chelsea. Different because of the sheer volume of money they might put at it. Or maybe Newcastle, but I don't think it's a priority position for Newcastle at the moment. William says, hi James, do you think the football culture in England is taking a hit from commercialisation and tourists going to games in a much larger scale? Do you miss the older days as a local? Yes and no. I mean, I speak often about the old White Hart Lane, and I'm blessed that I go to arguably the best stadium around every week now. But it would still go back to the old one more because of that intense and intimate feeling it had. But as I've got older, there's things about the game and the atmosphere you don't miss as much. I think more family orientated spectators is helping progress our game further in the future and stuff. I think a lot's being done at the moment to eradicate certain, let's say, racist / homophobic / abusive chanting, like it's beginning to go. And that probably would have been more powerful years ago. Like, do I miss being a part of that? No. And hearing that around me, no. And you never hear that at White Hart Lane now, and I don't hear it in away ends anymore. And I've been in away ends only going back a couple of years ago, say at Stamford Bridge, and heard horrendous homophobic chanting from, I would say, 50% of Tottenham fans that day. And we're slowly getting that out now. So do I miss that? No. Nobody should. I understand what the question's saying in terms of, we had a discussion recently with Dara Cohen when he came on COTC, our Fulham correspondent, with Mctavius, and we discussed the pricing at Fulham and their new Riverside stand, and it being like absurd, but it will get filled with tourists, not proper Fulham fans. And there's a balance to that, right? Because the football club doesn't really care where the money comes from. It's just if the money comes. And that's Tottenham's principle. And I think it's more of it's a London problem more than a general commercialization across the country, because I think the feeling towards it is probably very different from a London fan perspective to the majority of other places in the country. So I think we probably, I support a big London club. I probably feel that commercialization more, right? But like, I go to games every week and I see South Korean fans, right? Good. Like, so what? They're coming and supporting Sonny and supporting the team. They've got no less right to be there. So I just think it's the modern game and it's where it's going. And I probably don't have as much as a problem with it. I think the atmosphere can suffer a little bit, but it's not, if you take the South Korean fans as an example, they bring colour and noise and stuff and get involved with the chanting. So it's not them. It's probably more ticket pricing is probably more a bigger issue, where that prices out the people that want to come and chant rather than the people who can go and buy a box and want to show off what their work businesses are and stuff like that. And, oh yeah, I'll take you to a football match. Like, that's probably more of a, But pay the tickets have got the right. So, it's like moaning about the ticket prices at Tottenham. Tottenham paid the highest ticket prices on average across the country. Still be full opening day next season. So they've got every right to charge what they want from that perspective. As much as we can dislike it, you'll never get me massively moaning about ticket price because I pay it anyway. So, yeah, I understand the question, William. I think there's pros and cons. I don't miss it now as much as I think I might have done if you'd asked me that question a few years ago, is all I'd say to that. Rose Mendes says, hi, what changes you want in FPL next season? I want player pricing to be far higher. I want Erling Haaland to be 16, 17 million, and for people to have a decision to make. I want Reece James and Ben Chilwell to stay high. I want Trent Alexander-Arnold to stay high. I want Heung-min Son to stay high. I want this game to be difficult. That's what I want. I want to be here in April next year and be in this incredible position where we didn't all have the same team. Now, that's nearly impossible, I can guarantee, because this year we've had Arsenal, Newcastle, Brighton, Villa to a small extent, all do far better than expected. Even Brentford players, Fulham players, all do better than expensive and all got underpriced players, right? And for them this year, be someone else next year, right? Maybe Burnley will do outstanding, for example. Maybe Palace will finish 6th, 7th, who knows? So you won't completely eradicate that, but I just want the game to be harder. I want it to be an absolute headache. And very often, the first time I look at a draft to when I end up picking the final draft, when the season kicks off, it's normally probably 7 or 8 the same, and I don't think it should be like that. I think it should be tough. You'd be like, oh, I want to do this, or I need to do that, or it never feels like that. We should not be starting with all the same team in game week 1, and the easiest way to get around that is higher prices. In terms of chips and stuff like that, I really don't care enough about it. It's like whatever they decide, fine, let's crack on. There is speculation that there'll be some changes. Let's see. There might be worse. James Brennan says, hi James, thoughts on Mount at United? It's probably more thoughts on Mount leaving Chelsea. Just feels like a strange one. I realise Chelsea can put all of the profit as an academy player directly onto their accounts and stuff. I think for Manchester United's intelligence signing, I think it gives greater depth. He can play a variety of positions, whether it's like right, left, right, obviously central positions as well. I think it's a good signing. There must be concern about how often he's been fit this year, but it's homegrown. It's good. It's a good signing as far as I'm concerned. The money's for Manchester United. The money's almost irrelevant, right? Say it becomes top whack. It's United. You're not judging the money as much as you judge that with other clubs, because it's like, can you afford it? Yes or no. That's it. Ramiz says, is the Anfield atmosphere overrated? Well, look, it's a long time since I've been to Anfield, so it's probably not best place for me to particularly comment. But yeah, most people will say it's great for the like pre-game. It's brilliant, and then the game kicks off, and it's just like anywhere else. Dixie says, good afternoon, James. Good afternoon, Dixie. Lee Jackson says, thanks for putting the Premier League top 7 in the graphics. Looks beautiful. Well, you deserved it, Lee. Perlos Pen says, would you eat a bag of sand for Tottenham to win the treble? Yeah, I'd eat 2 bags. Ethan Justin says, where do you expect Tottenham to finish next season, and what would you be unhappy with? Almost impossible to predict at this moment without, there's going to be ins and there's going to be outs, and it's also subject to other clubs as well. It's interesting. I did a piece this morning, which Lee, you'll get to see later today, on the correspondent predictions from last year and how wildly out most of it is. So, like, what would I be happy with next year? To be honest, the league positions almost feels a little bit irrelevant on what I've watched the last couple of years. I explained it yesterday on Patreon by saying what I want is that this time next year, the season's finished, I feel positive about the progress, and I'm looking forward to the next season. What I don't want is what I felt for the last 6 months, what I felt for all of the Jose Mourinho spell, what I felt for the Nuno Espirito Santo spell, right? Other than 3 months at the end of the 21-22 season, it's been shite for 4 years. So what I want, and when I say shite, not all the results necessarily been shite, what I've watched has been shite. I want something I can go and enjoy and support. And like Arsenal fans have grown pride in their identity again this year. That's what I want, but I want it for my club. I want to be proud. And for Tottenham, it's never about expectations of you got to finish first, you got to finish fourth. It's as much about the pride and the feeling you have. And if the good results come with that, great. We become a football club that's become way too concerned on results. The positive vibe will breed good results, I believe. So it's way more this next year, to be honest with you. If we finished 8th, and I've got a feeling about the way my football team plays at the end of next season, it's similar to say how Brighton fans feel about the way they do about their team currently, or Aston Villa fans feel about the way they feel about their team currently. Sign me up. It's cool. The end position is not the most important thing, and that gives a relaxed vibe. And I think Tottenham fans need to be very patient next year to give Postecoglou the chance. There cannot be a change of manager next year. Like if we finish 12th, we finish 12th. If we finish 12th and you can clearly see what the progression is, what the identity is going forward, and have some belief in it, even if it finishes 12th, fine. Let's go again. Dryblast002 says, hi James, Højlund or Kolo Muani to Man United, who would be the better pick? I must profess I've not seen Højlund, Danish forward, isn't he? But I've heard some extremely good things about him. So I can't really judge that. And I can't say I've seen too much of Kolo Muani either. But I'm going to say Højlund, what I've heard about him, and it sounds like Haaland, doesn't it? I'm going to say him. FPL Kratos says, hi James, hope you're well. Wondering about your opinion on McAllister and how you see him fitting in our midfield. I think we've missed a versatile midfielder like him since Wijnaldum left. Yeah, really good player, Alexis McAllister. Like him a lot. We had a discussion on something we did last week about Suj had concerns about where he fitted in terms of a lot of Liverpool struggles, been off the ball defensively this season in the midfield area. And I kind of put down the process and said that if Liverpool continue with Trent coming inverted, then actually the position he'll end up playing for Liverpool is not dissimilar to the position, this is McAllister obviously, to what he's played at Brighton. So I think it works. I think he's multifunctional in the sense he can play 6, 8, 10. Really good player. It looks like price wise is going to be cheaper than what people were expecting as well. So very good player, very good signing. Luke Stevenson says, hi James, thoughts on big players going to the Saudi League? Saudi money has worked in golf and boxing. Worried it could take the best talent from the Prem and hurt the quality of it in the long term. Listen, some will go, right? Some will go, but are we sitting here worried that Haaland's going to go to Saudi Arabia? Listen, a lot of the league's hoping he does go so they can compete with City. So, no, I wouldn't be concerned about that because you have to remember as well that the Premier League could still completely outstrip the rest of Europe, even if Saudi Arabia did begin intacting these players. And I think there's a certain profile of player that the Saudi Arabian League is going for at the moment. Let's be honest, they're not taking, Saudi Arabia bid for Harry Kane, okay, who's arguably a little bit past his peak, I would say. I think his true best was sort of in 2018. Is Harry Kane going to Saudi Arabia? No. If Saudi Arabia came knocking in for a Rashford or Odegaards or Sakas, are they going to go? No. So, I don't have concerns on it from that perspective. Should we be concerned about its growth overall and what the meaning behind it is? Yeah, more of that than actual which players go. Holostamos says, where would you rate the City team in the last 30 years? Well, if they win Saturday, it's arguably the best, to be honest. Arguably, and I realise when we talk about where money comes from, there'll always be that hangs over City, the 115 charges against FFP, etc. But just on the pitch, it's got to be one of the best teams in English top flight history, even going back further than 30 years. So, yeah, top team. Ray Creshy says, great minds, James, on the best Premier League 11. Any summer plans, bud, holiday-wise? There's bits I want to do with the house next week. Then we're going to Brockenhurst for a week, which is just north of Bournemouth. Me, the wife, and little Harry, who's growing. And there is a meet-up arranged, by the way, Monday, June 19th in Bournemouth. I'll be meeting up with FPL Captain, who does the graphics on streams, and Andy Martin, our Leeds correspondent, he lives down that way. 3 of us are meeting up. Anyone's welcome, so just let us know. I'll put something out on socials probably next week to say this is the venue we've decided on, and let us know. So if we know we need to book a big table or anything. England are playing North Macedonia that night. It's a Monday night. Why Monday? Well, that's the one the missus has let me. And England are playing that night, so it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. So that'll be somewhere centre of Bournemouth for me. If anyone's interested, let us know. Holostamus, that's what I've done. Says also, thanks for the content. Love listening to you and Suj. Very welcome, mate. Thank you for your support throughout the season. Jerry Dharma Hughes says, hi, James. Do you think this Leicester side is considered a side too good to go down, like people saying West Ham 02-03? That West Ham side would have beat this Leicester side. Pretty confident of that, actually. In terms of individual talent, I mean, the forwards they had at West Ham was ridiculous. So, yeah, it might be one we review on. I mean, look, should Leicester have got relegated? Absolutely no way. No way with your, Maddison, Barnes, Iheanacho, Tielemans. I mean, yeah, when you look at it like that, it's ridiculous. Maybe it needs a bit of time to sink in and we go, yeah, Jesus, how did they... They shouldn't have been in trouble. That's clear. James Brennan says, hi, James. All-time 11, but you can only use each nationality once. Cheers for all the content this year. We've done this, and it's the sort of one, James, is a lovely question, but to put me on the spot like that, it's just going to be lots of umming and ahhing, which isn't great for the audio listeners. But we did all this during COVID, Probably it would have been something like Yashin, Beckenbauer, more Messi, Pele, Ronaldo, Cruyff, maybe. Not names that particularly unfamiliar. I think fullbacks might have been changing. Might have ended up going for someone like Ashley Cole. I can't remember, to be totally honest. But it's not a great one for the audio, James, but thanks for the question. Abolish Monday says, good afternoon, James. Congrats for your brilliant content. Which Premier League club do you think will have the busiest summer transfer window? The busiest? The instinct one, and that's the answer I'll give, is Chelsea. Just because of going to need to do work to get stuff out. But I think it's probably, there might even be a realisation that a lot of what they bought maybe isn't good enough and they want to buy more. So just based on what we've seen under the Todd Boehly era, I'm going to say Chelsea again. Chris Bradley says, hey James, thoughts on the situation at Wigan? Scary. So, I forget your guy's name now, but we did a pod on it about 6 months ago. Hello, Fly. This is going to come out weird for the audio listeners. The guy was trying to take over Morecambe, and the EFL hadn't been signing it off because he couldn't pass the fit and proper. And Suj and I did some investigation on him anyway, and it was shady as. So he's not got hold of Morecambe, but now he wants to get hold of Wigan. And you think, why is this even being a conversation that's happening? So, yeah, Wigan, unfortunately, it's not the first time I've been in this position over the last couple of years. And, yeah, got our eyes on it. I wish everyone there well, and it always seems to be those clubs in the northwest surrounded by City, United, Liverpool, and that, and you think it always seems to be them you worry for the most. But then we've had worries over Southend very recently as well. But yeah, I hope that works out on the right side for Wigan. Put it this way, this guy that was interested in Morecambe, you don't want, or Wigan fans don't want, that I'm certain of. Luke Stevens says Liverpool need 2 more midfielders, probably box to box, and a versatile centre back. Who would you sign for them? I could do with getting some money back for Tanguy and Dombele, mate. And if you want to take Eric Dyer off my hands as well. The chances are those answers aren't probably in the league. It's a difficult one. If you take Liverpool centre-backs, you say Van Dijk, Konate, Matip, Gomez, like as a 4 is... I compare that with Tottenham's. I'm like, it's light years. I know Van Dijk's had a dip-off, but it's light years better than what I've got, for example. Box-to-box midfielder. I wonder, an unusual shout. I wonder if someone like Conor Gallagher actually would maybe work well for Liverpool in terms of getting that high energy back in the team at times that it needs it. So there's maybe an unusual shout for you. James says, if Spurs somehow end up in the lower leagues, which would be the away days you'd most look forward to? Maybe one from the Championship, League 1, League 2. Okay. Championship... I can say Sheffield Wednesday now, can't I? Because they've been promoted. So Hillsborough, and shout out to Jojo, who I met at the game with 39, meet up afterwards. He's a Sheffield Wednesday fan, nice lad. I'd throw Bristol City in there as well because I've not done Bristol. But then I could just say that for League 1, couldn't I? I could say Rovers. League 1, Plymouth's another one to put in the Championship conversation now that I've not been to. League 1, League 1. What league are AFC Wimbledon in now? Then 1 or 2? I've not been there. That's one to throw in. But it's more, I know what you're saying, it's more the trips, isn't it? Wrexham in League 2, maybe, because I should have gone right there in the 5th round of the Cup, but went to Bramall Lane and got beat there instead. So go on Wrexham League 2. League 1. Who's in? I'm going to say Bristol Rovers. Let me go with Sheffield Wednesday, Bristol Rovers, and do I want to say? I don't really want to say Wrexham, do I? I'm going to say Bradford. There you go. I've never been to Valley Parade. Someone was talking about Bradford earlier. Let me say Bradford. Barry Hayward says, random question, is that Lily Savage in your title music saying the fantasy football show? It's definitely not Lily Savage, mate. It's just some automated shit. My friend Rhino says, hi James, no question, just thanks for the content. I don't think you praise lightly, but your footy brain is awesome. I hope your dad's foot is better. Have a good summer. Cheers, mate. Rhinos was looking after us when we went up to Leeds, and no, he's still fucked, mate. He went to the hospital on a Tuesday, and I'm like, exactly what I told the story, take more paracetamols. And he went again on Monday, and they said, there's nothing you can do. He's done some muscle damage. Like, there's literally nothing you can do. You just got to rest. So, He's not been back to work, mate. Honestly, he's not in a good way. He's fine. It's not dying, but his leg's not in a good way. Nigel says, I don't like taking hits either. Turns out I took 20. I mean, that's not a lot. That's very small. Jamie Shea says, hey, James, thoughts on how much McAllister improves Liverpool? Probably becomes most mute as an FPL option now without Pens probably playing deeper. Yeah, it wouldn't be one I think would be on radar for FPL unless he comes in really cheap, which he won't. I have kind of covered the question, but thank you for it, Jamie. James Brennan says, do you want Ericsson back? Him as 60 million for Kane. No, you're okay, mate. JHSUFC says, hi, James. What 3 positions players would you like Spurs to target from other Premier League clubs? Also, do you have a preference for a number 9 option if Kane was to leave? You can't replace that. You can't replace that, Harry Kane. So the replacements are probably already there, right? It's probably Richarlison and Son. And add more kind of attacking wide forwards. That's probably more what the solution would be for Tottenham. Because, I mean, you'd almost be better doing that as well. Imagine getting the direct replacement, like the pressure on, say, I don't know if Tottenham went and bought Mitrovic, for example. Imagine like the pressure on it, for example. I mean, Tony would have been the one, by the way, but that's obviously off the table at the moment. Would be the obvious if you wanted that profile of forward. Absolutely, Ivan Toney. David Raya from Brentford. I could probably name a few Brentford players. I really like Rico Henry. I've really liked what I saw of Matthias Jensen actually in game week 37 as well. Really, I think he's had a really good season and gone kind of quite under the radar, and he's doing all right in FPL for a little bit as well, but not generally an FPL asset, but good footballer. I'd take most of the Brighton team. It's probably well known. They mentioned Douglas Luiz earlier, but there's no idea why he'd swap with Villa for Tottenham. So you're probably looking more down the bottom end of the table. So probably more realistic targets would be, yes, like David Raya. That's only really because he's got the year left on his contract. Mark Gay at Crystal Palace. We were told last summer, there was a lot of rumours last summer that Tottenham had identified Mark Gay as a target for this summer. So that might be one to keep an eye on. I know there's interest in him from other clubs as well. Ebe Eze. I like Michael Elise as well. So it's probably more coming down to that lower end. Morgan Gibbs-White, and that is a name that's been mentioned a little bit last couple of weeks as well. But I think he actually would be much better off spending another season with Nottingham Forest, personally. So I've been looking more at the bottom end. I'm not going to, Chelsea aren't going to sell to us and shit like that unless they're desperate. But goalkeeper, centre-back, midfielder in that order. And what I'd love more than anything is Rodrigo Bentancur to be back fit as soon as possible. Ed Wells says, what are your thoughts on my team Palace next season, potentially without Zaha? It's a difficult one, isn't it? Don't know who the manager's going to be yet. And how much do we read into the way the season finished at the end? With Eze and the like getting their mojo back and stuff. Was that as much to do with the good fixtures? It probably wouldn't have happened in the same way under Patrick Vieira, but might you have still had the good results anyway? Maybe yes, that's what people suspected a little bit. So a difficult one. This top half finish kind of feels like it's always just a little bit out of reach for Palace. And my take would honestly be, Ed, that it's probably going to be like more of the same, to be totally honest. Jamie Shea says, name your top 3 favourite World Cup winning teams and why for each team, please, James. All right, cool. Spain 2010 because I had £200 on them. Argentina 2022 because Messi played in it. And I will say Brazil 94 because it was the first World Cup that I really watched. So let's go with them. Sean Govia says, Jota, Liverpool best attacker after Salah? Question. Well, look, Luis Diaz has been a big miss for a lot of this season, and I think he'll certainly prove that again next season. So, I mean, if you're asking that from an FPL perspective, let's just wait and see classification, prices, etc. It's probably not a forward next year, Jota, is he? So maybe comes back of interest. FPL Clary says, I've made it live for once. No question. Just thank you, James, and the team for all the content this year. Would highly recommend everyone become patron if you aren't already. Thank you, Claire. Love you, mate. Good luck to the Hammers tonight. Adam says, is Benzema wasting a year or two of potential top flight European football? Of course, he can do what he wants, but could he have more success at another top Euro club realistically? Yeah, but I think obviously taking the decision to leave Real Madrid and anything's a step down in that case anyway. I was having a discussion this morning actually with Clayton about, if it was a case that Real Madrid had said to him, which we don't think's happened, but Real Madrid said to him, look, we want you to go, you're free to go anywhere, and we'd known this in advance, would his name have been linked with Manchester United? Could he have done a great job for Manchester United for a year or two? And it's probably not stylistically necessarily what Ten Hag wants, but the answer is yeah. Like if Benzema's at Man United, plays, doesn't he, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't agree that he's gone to play at that level, but I don't know what his financial situation is. I don't mean, he earns millions. Yeah, I know that, but I don't know if he's pissed it out the wall, right? Maybe he needs it as a retirement fund. I have no idea. So, on the outside, yeah, I even look at N'Golo Kante, who's obviously been slowing down last couple of years, but has been a fantastic player in the Premier League. Like, has he got something still to offer at the top level? Yes, in my opinion. So, yeah, do I feel like they're wasting it? Yeah. Yeah, I do, in all honesty. But I also, the money's mad. And as soon as you hear it, it's like, Kante wouldn't earn anywhere near half what he's going to earn out there if he goes with anybody else. So, I don't know. I get it. I don't like it. I get it. Tino says, hi mate. Hello Tino. Field FPL says, Saudi Arabia want the World Cup. That's the ultimate goal, I'd say. Yeah, that might be another factor in it as well, but I think they don't need to have the best players playing their league for them to get the World Cup. They should not be in the running in the conversation for 2030 because Qatar's just had it. So, but they are, aren't they? Oh, we'll share it with, Egypt and Greece to make it look, yeah, okay, right, cool. Yeah, that they shouldn't be at the table, but there's a lot of thought process that they might well get it. Jamie, the 2030 World Cup, by the way, should be absolutely in South America. Absolutely is where it should be. It should ideally be in Uruguay. There was talk of Uruguay-Argentina joint bid, and that's where it should be, in my opinion. 100 years on from the original. Jamie Shea says, how would you feel about Spurs looking to go back to Celtic and buy some players? Trust Ange to get it right. Would you be sceptical? Nah. I mean, look, at a lot of people were probably sceptical when he went into, as we discussed, sort of like the J-League market and stuff and bought players, and they've been big successes there. So if he comes into Tottenham, he goes, this player will improve Tottenham, and he knows the player well, trust it, right? I'm sure there's a lot of Celtic fans would say, actually, these players, I've had a few Celtic fans say, you get your hands off Kyogo, for example. So I wouldn't have a problem with it. Not at all, right? There's players to fit into his style and how he wants to play. So, no, the Tottenham fans need to be very open-minded to what's about to happen. Pranav says, Mod, Kudos should be signed by a big Premier League club, hopefully a good ball-carrying midfielder. Maybe Spurs, Liverpool, Brighton, Newcastle. Also, what happened to Rafinha to Newcastle? Well, Rafinha, I think, wants to stay at Barcelona. Kudos obviously had a very good World Cup, and I'm sure his name will come back around in the next couple of weeks. Nigel said, agreed on the price and how easy it is to pick a team, but it would put off 80% of those playing the game. Yes, I realise that, and we're not the target audience, and that's why the pricing probably won't be too high. Relic Returns says, hi James, predictions on the destination of these players: Rice, Casado, Kane, Tielemans, Maddison, Lavia. I'm going to do this quick fire because there's only a few questions left, and I'm going to finish with David James Whiteway's comment at the end. So if you've got any more guys, leave them out. I'm just going to cover these last few. Rice, Arsenal, Casado, Chelsea, Kane. I still think he's more likely than not he'll be at Tottenham next year. Tielemans, I don't think will stay in the Premier League. I mean, it might end up in like Serie A, for example. Maddison could well be Tottenham. Lavia. Romeo Lavia. He's got to be in the Premier League somewhere next year, isn't he? I'm going to say Newcastle. Even though he's not been linked there yet, I'm going to say Newcastle. Steve says, hey James, a lot of us thought the FPL player price in general this year were too low. Did FPL get it wrong? Too many similar FPL teams. This is kind of what covered Steve. I'd like the pricing a lot higher, but as correctly pointed out, like, it's not for the masses. I know that for the masses, the target is get as many players as you like in your FPL teams as possible. We have to understand and accept that, so it's not going to happen. Ready Can Dance says, hi James, a lot of people say Pep is one of the greatest managers, and others say he's a checkbook manager. What are your thoughts? He's one of the greats, mate. one of the greats. And I know people for how would he get on if he managed Team X? Like, how would Tottenham get on if Pep Guardiola took over? My opinion on Pep Guardiola is if he took over Tottenham now and had the exact same team that Tottenham got, Tottenham finished top 4 next year, and then kick on and challenge for the title in the year after. Yeah, I think he's, I don't want to say revolutionised, but he's had a huge impact on football everywhere he's gone. And I actually think he's been really understated. There's been so much talk of Arsenal bottle job and all that, right? He picked that Man City team off the floor. That Man City team was on the floor in January, February and didn't look capable. And he managed to get a team that looked demotivated back around to go on this incredible run. So, no, absolutely one of the greats, and no doubt about that in my mind. Andy Max says, how do you think Wolves will do next season? Do you think Lopetegui will stay out? Go. Thank you for the question, Andy, but I did cover that quite near the start of the stream. I think they might have a difficult year. And also says, good to see you at the weekend, by the way, mate. Likewise, my friend. And David James Whiteway says, thanks for the pod, mate. Always insightful and considered. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much to everybody who contributed on the stream. If you just joined in a little late now, you can obviously watch it back. It will be available as an audio podcast shortly as well. On Patreon today, for the patrons listening, there is a Zoom in with me scheduled shortly, 2 till 3 p.m. UK time. There's details of that on Patreon. For all the rest of you, later today, as said, Game Week 39 women's match 5:30 p.m, the men's match 6 p.m. UK time tonight. That will be available on our YouTube channel. They'll be placed in as premieres. Please be nice to the FPL community in the chat if you're joining in live and stuff. We'll have the Premier League quiz tomorrow with Clayton Fernandez, and Suj will be back with me Friday for a look at our FPL seasons in more detail. And on Patreon tomorrow, we'll have Tottenham, which will be a reaction to West Ham's performance tonight in the Conference League final. Good luck to Hammers, and Suj will be with me for our final podcast on Patreon on Friday. Be reacting to the survey that we sent out to patrons very kindly, sent back to us on their Planet FPL feedback, which was hugely appreciated. But if you're watching live, smash the like, hit the sub button. If you're on the audio, 5-star reviews, always appreciated. Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.